And we're live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Dapr community call. My name is Cecil Phillip. I'm one of the community managers here for the Dapr project. If this is your first time here joining one of our community calls, welcome. Usually in our community calls, what we do is highlight a lot of the amazing things that are happening within the Dapr community. What are some of the updates? What are some of the cool things that are being built? What are some of the cool things that you're building with some of the tools that are being created within Dapr? Now, today we have a really fun agenda for us today. Arthur has joined us, and he's going to be talking to us about service invocation with the gRPC proxy in Java. And then we also have Cassie, who's going to be talking to us about the Dapr Jobs API. Now, one of the things I do want to call out really quick before we get started is that I've heard a lot of folks mention to us that they don't always know when the community calls are happening. They don't know, when we go live. So for those of you that might be watching the recording of this, I just want to call out really quick that if you head over to our Dapr organization over on GitHub, which is going to be github.com/dapr.community, all of our community calls are planned usually in the open. So if you head over to this community repo and you click on issues, you can see when some of the upcoming community calls are going to be. You can see where some of the speakers are. And if you're interested yourself in speaking in one of our community calls, feel free to go ahead and comment on the issue. Just let us know what you'd like to talk about, obviously who you are, and now we can start working with you to get you involved in the community call. So just wanted to call that out real quick because, again, we did have some folks mention that they're not always sure whenever the community calls happen. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and share the screen really quick, and then Arthur, you're going to go and talk to us about service invocation, right, with the Java SDK.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So let's go to the next slide, please. So service invocation in Dapr for gRPC is recommended to be using the proxy mode. What does proxy mode means? Proxy mode means that your existing client code can work with Dapr sidecar as long as you point it to the sidecar endpoint locally, and you add the required metadata header for the application ID. And so that's minimally invasive. You don't need to even use the SDK. Although it is possible, as you can see in the example, there's a lot of code. There's a lot of code there's boilerplate code before you get a working stub to make the invocations in Java. So all of this is just so in the case, in the end, blocking stub is there. So you get to, for example, you need to parse the environment variable that the runtime, this Dapr runtime will inject for you. You have to understand what that means and parse it. And you also need to make sure you add the metadata, for example. And of course, you also have to control the life cycle of the channel, of the gRPC channel. So can you go to the next slide, please? So that's a summary of the problems. It does not automatically add the metadata attribute for you. It does not even add the token, for example, the API token that you need in case your sidecar is protected. It does not parse the environment variable automatically. You have to do it yourself. Auth token, I mentioned that already. You have just the life cycle, and it does not even wait for the sidecar to be healthy. So if you want to do all of that, you have to do that yourself. So in the next release of the Java SDK, which will happen with the 1.14 release of the runtime, we address all of that in what we believe to be a much simpler way to enable this invocation. So if you go to the next slide, please. So in this slide, you can see how by leveraging a Dapr client, which is initialized in a try-catch block, which means it will be automatically closed in the end for you. And that's automatically how you do it today. So you don't need to worry about that today for any of the APIs in Java. That's how it works today for the Java SDK. But then now we create a new method called new gRPC stub, which will return for you a stub already with all the interceptors to include the token if needed, to add the app ID header if needed. Even retries are added for you. So all that by this new, and then you just have to implement a callback function after passing the app ID. There's a missing quotes in the example, um, but and then you can wait for the sidecar, for example, like call client or wait for sidecar, and then after that the blocking stub is ready to use. So as you can see, it's much simpler. You don't need to do all that boilerplate code. Can you go now to the next one? Next slide. So basically everything that we read now is green. It handles out all of that for you. And I'm going to run a quick example for you today. Can you now can we go to my screen? Thank you very much. So Hello World service is a gRPC service that doesn't know about Dapr. There's nothing here that's Dapr specific. It doesn't implement any of the Dapr protos. It's a regular gRPC service that you have running um, uh, on your application. Okay. And here we have the client. The client now uses the Java SDK. And remember the try catch method, uh, 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 try catch block I was talking about? It's here. And then the stub to invoke your service is here, like in these slides. And then it makes the invocation here, just like you would without using Dapr. So there's nothing Dapr specific after this. So after you create the blocking stub, there's nothing Dapr specific. You just work the way you work with gRPC in Java. And there's a README file that you can walk through after release. And I'm gonna just do run this example for you. So let's go to the next slide. And the first thing we're gonna do is make sure we are in the examples folder, right? And I'm gonna run the service. In this example, I have to pass the Dapr host IP because I'm in a VPN, and sometimes it can pick the wrong IP address. But that's a well-known fix for running Dapr locally if you're running with VPNs and multiple networks. And then it runs the service just like you would normally, and the Java command is at the end. Okay. And then, as you can see, I'm running with the latest runtime RC for 114, and the service started successfully. Now I'm gonna go and run the client side, and hopefully the client side will make an invocation to the server side. There you go. We try to greeting hello world, and then if you look here, you get greet your word. Okay, we got the invocation done. That's all, folks. Thank you very much.
And I am muted. Sorry about that. Oh, well, that was really good to see. So you mentioned that this is going to be in 114. What are some of the, for folks that are Java developers that are using Dapr, what are some of the benefits that they would get by adopting like this new way of doing things?
Oh, I think let's recap what we discussed today. First is you don't need to manage the lifecycle of the channel, of the gRPC channel on the client side. You don't need to parse the environment variables that the Dapr CLI injects for you. So that all that is handled automatically by the SDK. You won't need to add the header to invoke the app. You won't need to add the header for authentication with the sidecar if you're using that in your configuration. So all of that comes much easier versus you having to know what those are and having to parse them yourself in your client side. The server side doesn't change anything. So as you can see, the service doesn't need to have a single line about Dapr. It's all on the client side.
Got it. We do have a question coming in from LinkedIn. Mohammed is asking, can you touch on service-to-service auth and auth really quick?
Oh, so this is handled by Dapr today via MTLS. So in Dapr, every service has an identifier, right? It's called app ID, and then you can make sure that you use MTLS, and then you can configure which services can talk to which are the service in the, I think it's via configuration if not mistaken. But we do have that support in Dapr, and that doesn't impact the client code at all. So you don't need to implement that in the client, so in the Java code. All is done by the sidecar.
Nice. Now, for folks that might be wondering, like, where can they get some of the samples that you were just running just now? Are these all available on GitHub, on Dapr repo, or like where can folks
Correct.
access you're using?
They're all available right here. GitHub.com/Dapr/Java SDK. And if you go to /examples, you can see all of them there.
Nice, nice. So for Java developers that are going to be using this SDK, like what's one thing you'd really love to get from them? Like, are you looking for like feedback from folks about how the SDKs are working? Are you looking for contributions? Like, what is some of the ways that the community can help you really help push this feature?
I think the like I said, my first ask is to use it, and give feedback and ask questions either via Discord or via GitHub issues. I think that's the first value we're going to get from this. And then after that, if you want to help, you can help by like improving the examples, creating more examples, or even better, presenting here the community call a complete use case of Dapr and Java.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much, Arthur. That was great. So folks, like you said, definitely head over to github.com/Dapr/Java SDK. And then you could, look at the samples that he just ran. You could try out the new feature and definitely let us know what you thought about it. And so with that being said, Arthur, I don't think I have any more questions for you. So I'm going to take your screen off. And now, Cassie, I know you're going to be talking to us about the Jobs API, right?
Yes, let me share my screen.
All right, I see your screen, and it is up.
Perfect. Yes, we will be going over the Jobs API, which is a new building block in Dapr, along with the scheduler service, which is a brand new control plane service as well. So yeah, my name's Cassie Coyle, Dapr contributor, Java SDK approver, and then a part of the Diagrade open source team. So let's start with some of the motivation as to why we wanted a new Jobs API building block and a new scheduler control plane service. So we have on the right, you'll see the actors and workflows, like building block icon with the little description there. Like those exist in Dapr today, right? And actors use reminders, which is a thing to tell actors when to come back online. And actor reminders didn't scale all too well. We wanted to enable this, right? And workflows under the hood uses actor reminders. And so we wanted, obviously, that to scale so we could scale workflows. So that was like a big motivator for us to build these things. And then also the cron binding was a popular thing used in Dapr. We wanted to improve like the user experience there and make a first class like Jobs API that was like flexible and can be expanded to other APIs in the future releases, maybe to have a delayed pub sub or delayed service invocation call and so forth. So this was kind of the motivation. Now let's touch on, the new scheduler control plane service. It is a brand new binary, like a brand new control plane service. It can be ran in HA mode, so you can have a single instance or you can have 3. It'll run in both Kubernetes and standalone mode. And going forward, it will be deployed by default with the Dapr CLI. So the capabilities are the scheduler. Going forward, I will just say scheduler, and I will be talking about the control plane service that we added. It stores jobs to be sent back to an app at some point in the future. That is what it will do. And we guarantee that a job will be triggered by only one scheduler. So you don't have to worry as you scale out about getting the same job back from multiple schedulers. We handle that logic internally. The implementation kind of details for this new scheduler control plane service is that we have this scheduler process, and inside we have an embedded etcd here. That is the etcd database. That's where we store the jobs. And then, like I mentioned, we have an internal cron scheduling library. This keeps track of, as you scale out your schedulers, it keeps track of which scheduler owns which subset of the jobs. So that is our new control plane service. Another thing to note, you do not have to do any additional etcd configuration. Really, it'll just kind of auto magically work for you. I know I've seen questions about that before, so just touching on that. How do you use the scheduler? Well, you use it with our new Jobs API. It's a new building block in Dapr. It's an alpha API, right? So it'll take another release or two before it moves out of the alpha. You can schedule a job, you can get a job, and you can delete a job. So how that works is via both gRPC and HTTP. From your app, you can say, hey, schedule job foo. That'll go to the sidecar, like Dapr D here, and then it'll go on its way over to the scheduler. A simple post to schedule a job looks like this. We hit our V1 Alpha 1 jobs endpoint. This is the job name, which is test. You send in the data, the job data. So for me, I just have this Google type expression where my expression is my name. And then the due time for this job is going to be 3 seconds. So 3 seconds from the time I schedule this, I'd like to get the job back. So that is an example. Let's look at the whole thing put together. So this is the Jobs API and our scheduler service. With this whole thing, you can schedule jobs to be executed at some point in the future. From your app, if you were to schedule job foo, you can schedule it via gRPC or HTTP, so we support both. It comes to Dapr D, the sidecar. Dapr D then sends your job to the scheduler. Again, it's that same schedule, get, and delete a job. That comes into the scheduler. Foo will live inside your etcd. And then once the 3 seconds is ticked, or once we're at the 3 seconds from when you scheduled it, that will be the quote unquote trigger time to send the job back to your app. So at trigger time, it'll come back along a streaming connection from the scheduler to the sidecar. And then from there, the sidecar, Dapr D, will send the job back to your app via both gRPC or HTTP, whichever. So if it's gRPC, it's the on-job event. Otherwise, it's just the /job. And this is the whole workflow if you were to schedule a job foo. Now, let's take a look at an example. Before I get into the example, I do want to showcase our new Dapr init. So this is just my newly built CLI. So it's just my CLI. So Dapr init, giving it the runtime version of our latest RC. Okay, now we see our Dapr scheduler is deployed by default. So if I do a Docker PS, we can see that I have a scheduler here that is running. And then Docker logs. If we look at the logs for our scheduler, we see starting Dapr scheduler service. We see that runtime version I passed in, which is our latest RC. We see setting log levels, starting etcd metrics, schedulers listening on port 50,006, running our gRPC server on that port. Then we'll start to see some embedded etcd logs. Then we'll start to see some Raft logs, right? So it uses Raft under the hood for that consistency. So we'll see some of that. And then we'll see, okay, etcd server is ready. starting that etcd cron library. So we're good to go. Scheduler is happy, it's running. Now let's take a look at that quick start example. Fernando has an open PR with this exact code because this is his branch. So thank you, Fernando. I'm going to run a simple job service, which is inside this new jobs folder. It is a Go example, and it's the HTTP example. So we have two folders here, a job scheduler, which is going to be performing like the scheduling of our jobs, and then job service, which is going to do the handling of the triggered jobs for us. So let us run, well, I guess let's look at the code first. So this is job service. This is going to handle the consumption of our triggered jobs. So we set up a job handler /job, and then we're going to output server started on the port, listen and serve, right? This is our main. And then that handle job function, which we're going to execute when we get a triggered job back to our app. We're just going to output that we've received the job request. We'll read the body, unmarshal our data, decode the data, and then we'll simply print out, some of our droid job, like job info that we got back. So that is the first service we will run. Now that we have our scheduler up and running, let's go ahead and run that. So Dapr run, passing in the app ID, app port, and the Dapr HTTP port, and then we'll run our code. Okay, that looks good. Server started on port 6200. And then we see here scheduler stream is connected. Perfect. Now let's just run a post to schedule a job. All of this is in the quick start. It's an open PR, so I'll give you all the link at the end. And okay, if we were to post to schedule our job against our V1 Alpha 1 jobs endpoint, this is the job name, so job for Java. Here's our job data, and we want it due in 2 seconds. So that'll come back probably like right now. We already see that our app that is like running code to handle our triggered jobs already received our job, right? It was due within 2 seconds. So we got it in those 2 seconds, and we just printed some of the job details that we just sent to the scheduler. So perfect. Let's run the next example. So this one is another post we see. We're going to schedule job C-3PO with this limb calibration data, and we want it due in 30 seconds. Okay. So obviously we won't get that back right away. Like you see, we don't have that yet. It's not been triggered. But what we can do is we can get that job. Let's just double check that that's, in our scheduler. We've scheduled it. Still haven't received it yet because it's not yet been 30 seconds. Let's run that get for that C3PO. And you can see that we got the exact data that we just sent, posted earlier. So perfect. And it has been 30 seconds since we posted it. So we do see that we got that job, the C3PO limb calibration job. Great. But now let's delete it. I don't want that job just hanging around. So let me clear this for y'all. Perfect. So if I were to run this delete job against our V1 Alpha jobs endpoint, I want to delete the job we just got back. Great. That'll go ahead. But now I want to get it. What happens if I get a deleted job? Well, we get an error. The job is not found, right? Because we just deleted it. And then our app will actually get this error too. Error getting job due to the job is not found, which is expected because I just deleted it. So perfect. That is working as expected. And in this quick start, example, we actually have a job scheduler app as well here. Let's take a look at that. It's essentially the code for what we just saw, where we're scheduling 2 jobs, and then we'll do a get. So here's that main function. I'll gloss over some of the Dapr setup. We have our ports there, building that URL, right? Like what we just saw from the curl with the job name. And then we're going to send in this job body here, which is up here at the top. It's those same exact ones, the R2D2 oil change due in 2 seconds, and then that limb calibration C3PO due in 30 seconds. So this code is just going to say, hey, I'd like to post that job, schedule this job, go and do that. We'll output that the job was scheduled, sleep 5 seconds. Then we want to schedule the second job that we did the curl for. So we're going to post that right here. We'll output that we scheduled that job as well. And then we're going to do a simple get right here. So HTTP get, we want to get that C3PO job. And that'll be the extent of this app. So the app for consuming is still up and running. So we'll leave that. But now, let me kill this. Now let's run our job scheduler app. Okay, great. That's up and running. We can see we're using the version. Okay, so we scheduled that R2D2 job. And that one was due in 2 seconds. We scheduled that C3PO job that was due in 30 seconds. And then we got this job, which was the C3PO job, and we got the data back. That means it's in our database. And then if we come over here, we got that R2D2, we received the job request, and we printed out the details from that first job we scheduled that was due in 2 seconds. And then here in another, here right now, we get the job that was due in 30 seconds, which is that C3PO job. So this is the extent of our demo. We kill everything that's killed. And then if I do an uninstall, we'll see that the Dapr scheduler was in fact removed. So that is our demo. But now let's see the active reminders using that scheduler service. We know that scheduler can scale to potentially millions of jobs. So we want to use that to scale our active reminders. To enable that, you use the preview feature in this manner. This is the config for scheduler reminders. Enabled is true. And we have gotten good feedback from Ollie, which is really good to hear. So Ollie's done the first pass of stability testing in the new 114 release candidate, which contains our long-awaited fix for the horizontal scaling issues of workflows. So Ollie's been doing some great testing, very much appreciated. And he has great things to say so far. And some partially concrete numbers, right? They're like percentages, but these are hard percentages that we calculated based on our performance numbers, and they're in the Dapr proposal PR. But here's workflow performance numbers using the scheduler for the reminder system. For parallel workflow testing, running a max concurrent count of between 60 to 90, we saw performance improvements to the tune of 71% using the scheduler, whereas using the old reminder system, the performance actually dropped by 44%. So this is already really great. And then upon doing a high scale testing with a max concurrent workflow of 350 with 1,400 iterations, we saw performance improvements to the tune of 50% higher than the old reminder system. And scheduler, we know, can scale. That's kind of why it was built, right? And scheduler is potentially, it can scale to millions of reminders, right? But it's at most limited by the storage in etcd, but not the throughput of our reminders, which is good for us, right? And we can see those numbers are really improved. And here are those links that I mentioned. Here is the link to the proposal if you'd like to read more in depth about the implementation details. We do have the scheduler service docs and the V114 docs. And here's that link as well as the jobs API building block. And then the quick start link is right here. The code I showed is in a PR right now, so please take a look. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who was involved. This was a very large effort. So thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassie. So if folks for you that are watching, if you have any questions for Cassie, go ahead and drop them in the comments or in the chat section, and we'll make sure that we get them answered for you right here live. But I do have a question for you, Cassie. And one of the things that I was wondering about was, so you talked about like high availability a little bit, right? So, when I have multiple instances like of this scheduler service, of my service running, right? Like you should be able to scale with that. What happens if my services like fall off? You know what I mean? Like what happens if my services die? Are the jobs that I had scheduled persisted? Like will they continue, or would they, like what happens when failure happens and like all of my instances of my scheduler fall off?
So we do have persistence, and right now in standalone we have a volume by default, so it is persisted, and the jobs kind of get reshuffled with our internal cron library. So like if they go down and whatnot, there will be that reshuffling of who owns what job, so we keep track of like which to trigger and send back. Still, we don't lose jobs being triggered. They just kind of wait until like the schedulers come back up and they can be sent back. So hopefully that answers, unless Archer wants to add more.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I would just add that because also it's a separate control plane service, the application lifecycle does not affect the liveness of the cron jobs. So it's just going to be an error when you try to invoke the app, and going to be retried later. But it's not. It's a separate control plane. Your app can go down, up and down, won't affect it.
I think that brings up another interesting question for me is like, what happens if I schedule jobs, but there's nothing on the other side listening to accept the job? Like, would it just kind of stay in the scheduler until something's ready?
You'll get an error back if there's no like scheduler clients. You'll see that in the Dapr logs, like, oh, no scheduler clients initialized. It'll keep trying to connect. So like the sidecar will keep trying to connect to the scheduler. But if you're trying to schedule a job to the sidecar will throw an error like, oh, no clients, like error. And we do have a nice add-on is we do have the error standardization already for the scheduler, like for the jobs API. So you'll get more enriched errors.
Nice. Awesome. And one more question I wanted to ask was, so once I have a job schedule and it's running, and let's say, this is a fairly long running job, like it's going to take more than 10 seconds to come back and give me like some results. Is there a mechanism for me to check the status of a running job? Like, is it still running? Is it stuck? Like, how do I kind of poke inside the inside of the instance and know what's going on?
So when you schedule a job, like it'll come back to you at like the certain time, and then you do whatever business logic you want once you get the job back. And we do keep like track, and we take a successful job that was sent.
Yeah, but I don't think our APIs right now will offer some sort of stats on what like is a job, was the last time the job triggered, was an error, how many successful calls, how many failed calls. We don't keep track of that yet. We can, but we don't do that in this version. I think it's a great idea for the next release.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be great to just be able to say, okay, the job started, but then after it started, it's still running, stop running, finish successfully, finish with an error kind of thing. Like that would be great information.
Well, so like from that concept, there's no like start and end of a job. It's like you schedule a job, and then it's kind of like a black box. Like it goes through the sidecar, goes to the scheduler, it lives in the scheduler until it's time to be triggered and sent back. I mean, in that dynamic, like there's no start and stop. It's just kind of, it's sent along, and you will receive it back in your app at the trigger time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great. I think, Cass, is a great opportunity to clarify that the term job here does not mean like an activity with a start and an end, like you mentioned. The
Yes.
term job here means like a cron job, means like a trigger, a recurring trigger to the application.
It is something with like data and a time, like a schedule, like an interval or a due time, like, hey, in 3 seconds, I want this job back. So that's kind of why like we can potentially think about adding stuff like this, but it doesn't exist currently.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. We have some more questions coming in. This one's coming in from YouTube, from Whit Waldo. Is there an outstanding list of features you're looking to augment the service with in the future releases? So, do you have a list of features? I guess he's asking for a backlog. Do you have a
Yeah, so
backlog you can share with us?
yeah, there is an open issue in Dapr right now with it's like the POC link. I can find it right now, but we do have it's issue number 7246. I can drop that link somewhere. It's the running list of things, and at the bottom of that, we have a follow-up list of things we want to do, like a list API, but we had to think about pagination of the jobs and whatnot, and a whole lot of other things. So feel free to like comment and add there. And then if it gets to be like too big and a lot of people are commenting, we can open up like a separate issue to be a little cleaner.
Gotcha. And then
Yeah, we also want you to make the job, for example, consider how easier it can be to how to scale the scheduler. That's another item that we are considering. But yeah, the list is still open.
got it. And then another question. So can the user pick the job to be sticky or move on error?
To be sticky or move on error. I'm not sure I understand what the intent.
I think it's the question is, we have this question before in the Dapr issues regarding reminders, because some people use reminders, but when the reminder fails, some people, for example, the application had an error or crashed. There are two scenarios. Some applications want that trigger to be retried, and some applications want the trigger to be given up and move on. So yeah.
Right now, I guess it's not sticky. We will be adding like an orphaned job, like go routine, if there are those failure cases to keep retrying, and just have like a queue of jobs to keep retrying in the background.
Okay. Another question coming in really quick from YouTube. This one's from Tom. Is the scheduler treated as an app outside of workflows and is called as an external workflow call that waits? So pretty much it just wants to know, is the scheduler completely separate from workflows?
So scheduler is like it's just its own control plane service, a brand new one. Like you see placement, you will see the Dapr scheduler in like a separate container running, totally separate. The only way it like plays with workflows is if you enable that preview feature with scheduler reminders, which will store the actor reminders in scheduler, like behind the scenes kind of for you. And then that way it can scale a lot more. So it is treated completely separate. And the only way to use actor reminders and like the workflows, internal reminders in the schedulers with that preview feature. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, and then if you rewind the video a little bit, Cassie did show an example of, or she did show us some stats about like workflow with the scheduler and some of the performance benefits that you can gain from like, doing that. So definitely feel free to like, rewind a little bit and see, some of those things that she had. All right, folks, I think that's it for questions for now. Thank you, both of you, so much for coming on and, giving us demos and talking to us about some of these new features that are coming out in 1.14. And I believe as of today, we're at release candidate 3, if I'm not mistaken, for 1.14. We're still at release candidate 5. Jeez, you guys read quickly. We're at release candidate 5 for 1.14. So again, this is always a great opportunity for folks to try out the new features, the preview features, before they come out. Like Arthur was saying earlier, give us feedback, send us issues, let us know what you think about them. Also, let us know what use cases you're using them for, because that always helps to, influence how things are worked on and what features get prioritized. Now, we're not done yet. I wasn't saying goodbye. I'm going to bring up my screen really quick, and we are going to do a little bit of community show and tell. Now, actually, the first thing I wanted to show you for show and tell today, and I don't think we've announced this before in a community call, but we are going to be having Dapr Day on October 16th. So October 16th, 2024, this year, in a few months, the CFP is open. So we're definitely asking folks to definitely send over your submissions for talks. Even let us know what type of talks would you like to hear when it comes to Dapr. One of the things that's really special about this October 16th day is that Dapr is actually turning 5 years old. So not only we're having Dapr Day, but it's going to be the 5-year anniversary of the project. So, we're definitely hoping to have like a really great event with all of you from the community. And so definitely please send over your submissions and just join us for a good old time on October 16th for Dapr Day. Okay. Now, what else we got going on? Let me head back over to the slides really quick. All right, so we do have a bunch of really cool blog posts. Actually, let me share from here. Close this. Right. So Aaron did a interesting blog post on actors in Python, which I think is very fitting because we just talked about the scheduler and actors and reminders a little bit, right? So now here you go with an example of a blog post that talks about how you could start using distributed actors in Python. This one's over on dev.to right now. And then also we have another blog post that talks about using Radius with Dapr. This one's coming from Jonathan Smith. So, and as always, if folks want to, obviously get the links and things of that nature for these things, we are going to share them, one, inside of the description of the video once the video is done. And then also, inside of our Discord channel, we have a little show and tell section in there where we post, links and things of that nature as well. Now, in addition to that, we've also had a lot just happening in the community. Lots of folks going to different conferences talking about Dapr. So, here we can see, on the Kubernetes podcast, the NDC, Sydney, and again, tons of other conferences where folks are just, talking about some of the really cool things that are happening in Dapr and around the Dapr ecosystem. And also definitely make sure you check us out on social media, some of our community managers and other folks that are on LinkedIn, they're on Twitter, they're on Mastodon, they're on all the social things that you want to connect us on. Like there's definitely someone there to be able to answer your Dapr questions and be able to engage with the community that way. And last but not least, we say this every time, but we are big fans of badges. We'd love to give you all badges for all the community contributions that you do. So right now we have writer badges and presenter badges. So all you have to do is, if you write a Dapr blog post or if you give a presentation, like we showed some of the presentations at conferences just, a few seconds ago, just let us know and you'll be able to get a badge, right? And really all you'd have to do is once we issue you the badge, you sign into, I think it's HoloPen with your GitHub account, and then you'll be able to retrieve your badges and, show off to all your friends how cool you are and how much you've contributed to the Dapr ecosystem. And even for just showing up, because again, I told you all how much we love badges. Just for showing up, like you can get your Dapr community supporter badge today. This is available for everyone. You really don't have to do anything but just tell us that you love Dapr, which I'm going to assume that once you're on this community call for the last 40 minutes that you love Dapr, right? And you love all the cool things that we're doing here. So you can scan this QR code right now. Definitely, and head over to, you'll see there at the bottom, holopin.io/@Dapr. And you'll be able to get this community pin or this community badge right now. And again, for all of you folks that are new, welcome again. If you want to know how to engage with us and where to go to just learn a little bit more about Dapr, Dapr.io is obviously a really good starting place to go to. That's where you can find like all of our documentation, links to samples, and tons of other resources that you can make use of. Dapr YouTube channel. You're watching us on YouTube right now, so I think you already know what that is. And obviously, we're also on GitHub, we're on Discord, we're on Twitter, and all those other social things that I mentioned before. But with that being the case, again, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And we will be back again in the next 2 weeks for another Dapr community call. Again, we'll always have folks there to be able to answer your questions and things of that nature. Oh, and before I forget, because we did speak about like some new features today, inside of the Discord channel, we do have sections that talk about all of the different building blocks and features of Dapr. So if you specifically wanted to go in and ask about the Jobs API as an example, or a scheduler, there are channels in Discord that you can go in and specifically talk with folks in the engineering team and folks that are working with the project, so you can get your questions answered. So definitely, again, big plug for Discord. Make sure you head over there and ask all your questions and get everything done. But with that being said, that's all, folks. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.